Finally, let's see how to showcase the active link. Well, it's very easy. You do not do that in the server link component. For example, this link will have no idea like in which route your page is, at least not now. That means you need the client end, because that route or the pathway or the path name of your route, when I say the path name, I mean this path name, which is slash, or this path name, which is say about, or this path name. All of these are the path name which is present in the browser, which means it is client end interactive segment, which means we have to create now the first client component of our entire project. But before we do that, let me just show you how you can extract the path name in this new one. Well, there's a hook called use path name. If we say path name, use path name, and this is coming from Next navigation. There's another hook called say router, which is use router, which is also going to come from the navigation. And then we also have something called search params, which is going to be use search params, which is also going to come from Next navigation. Now, and refresh, it will give me the error. All of a sudden it will say, oh wait, you know what? You have to use client directive at the top of your file to use this use path name client component, right? Use path name hooks only works in the client component. For the most part, all the hooks works in the client component only. But wait a minute, doesn't that means that we have to again make our entire header as client? No. So if I go back to the Excel draw, you can think of it like this. Imagine that this blue ones are your server components. And now imagine that this green ones are your client components. So the client component can come under the server component very easily. As a matter of fact, the idea here is that you should make sure that the client component is as low as possible, meaning the client component should be the leaf node, this entire tree structure, as much as possible. That does not mean that that is the only way that you can actually do it, but that is something that you should think about when we are designing it. For our case, we have something called app, and then within that we have something called say dashboard, and this is also our layout. Now this page has two more elements, which is like, this layout has three elements, which is header. Here we go, we will say footer, and we will have a layout. Okay, then the header has say a link. What we want is this link to be a client component. Let's go back here, client link.tsx. Then I will say client link, right? And this will have the same link component from the Next.js itself. Of course, it will contain the children, which is what we are going to pass like this and like this, which is going to be a React node. And I will make this as type. And then here I will have href is going to be href of href. Let's call this as, for now, string. And that's about it. This is what it is. Also, we can have say class names, like this, which is going to be say string for us. Of course, we will look into all these later, how we can define it better. But for now, this can be like class name, and this can be class names. And that's about it. So this is our link, but it is still a server component. To make it a client component, at the very top, you supply use client. And the moment we do this, this entire thing became a client component. So let's default export it like this, and we can remove all this. Okay. Now, wherever there is a link which we want to highlight, which is only in the navigation, let's go back and simply remove this and make it like this. Let's also make this like optional. Okay, and that should do it. So if we go back and we refresh, see, nothing actually changed. Everything is working fine. Cool. But what changed is that inside this client component, we can now use path name. So let's use the path name as use path name. Okay. Now let's console the path name and like this. Let's make it like this. Okay. Now let's go back. In our terminal, we will see that nothing is actually being consoled here. So how about we refresh? Now it is being consoled here, and this is our path name. If I inspect it, since it is now a client component, our browser will also console it. Cool, great. Similarly, we can have more of them. So let's have all three of them. Let's see how it actually shows. So search params is now use search params. We will also have params as use params like this. All of them are coming from next navigation. Remember this, next navigation. We also have router, which is going to be use router. Hope this is the same router, not from here. I want it from here. And then we can remove this. Now, then I will say search params, router, save, go back, and here we are. So we have the params as nothing, which is an object. Path name is this. Router is having all the things that we used to have, like back, which is this back, fast refresh, which is a function, forward, which is this forward, prefetch, which is something that the link does automatically, push, which means go to that page, replace means clear the history. For example, if I click here, all these are histories. You can actually replace the entire thing. So this is what it is, right? The entire link component contains all of this function and with some sort of like a default. For instance, if I go to this link component, there's something called replace, which is a boolean. Default is false. There's something called prefetch, which is a boolean. Default is true. Then you have something called ping, placeholder, prefix, and all sort of things that you can actually look into, property and whatnot. Now, in case you want to do something like with router, for example, just to showcase an example, if I have, say, a button, right, I have to wrap this with, say, a fragment like so. If I have a button, go back. So here I can say on click, and here I can just pass the function, which is going to be the router, which is going to be back, forward. So let's call the back, and that should do it. Now, if I go back, it says go back, right? If I click on this, it went to about. Again, go back. It is now here. Again, go back. Now we are back to this. And you can have play with the other functions if you want. Most likely, you will not use the router unless extreme situation. And it is also recommended that you always use the link element because, well, let's put it this way. It is more accessible. So if we have to implement the active link, we have to get the path name to match exactly with what we have right here. But if you look here, the path name is not getting matched at all. I mean, yes, this is getting matched, but this hash ID of the same page, it is not getting matched at all. If I go to the profile link, you will find that the path name now becomes /dashboard/profile. However, if I go back to the home page and in any of this, right, the path name does not change. Even if you come here by entering the URL, you are not getting that, right? So there's no way for us to match this. Now, in the previous version of Next Pages, we used to have something called router as path, which used to print pretty much all the things, and then we can extract out our things. But here, there's no such thing as that. So what should we do? Well, let's go and create our own hook then. Inside the src, I will create a folder named hooks. Now here I will say use hash path .ts. It is going to be a use client component. Why? Because we need to have the window object accessed here. Okay. Then we are going to say use hash path, and that will have two things. First, it will have hash, and then we will say set hash. We will use the use React. Now, if we want to use any sort of like a React hook, we need this. Okay, we need this client component directive. So for this, we will have get hash path. and we will call this like this. Okay, so let's create our function get hash path. So it will first check the type of window is not equal undefined. Okay, and if that is the case, then it is going to simply decode the URI. Again, basic things. I mean, it's a JavaScript thing, so I'm not going to go deep into it. It is going to say decode URI component, and then here we will say window dot location. Remember that we also already have checked that the window is not undefined, so that means window will be present, and since the window object will be present of the browser, location is by default there anyways. And then we will get the hash. We will simply have to replace that with this hash to nothing. Okay, and if that is not the case, that we don't get the window, then let's go with the undefined. So either this hash will be defaulted to undefined or it will be placed with this. Now what will actually happen is that this hash will be undefined on the server, and then here it will be this. Okay, so that will create some sort of like a hydration error. So to skip that, we will also check whether it is a client or not. Is client, and is client, set is client. We will start with false because this code will first run on the server, right? This is how the old pages directory used to work, and this is exactly how it is going to work right now whenever we use the use client directive. Let's also export this use hash path hook. Now we have to return if it's client, right? Then we return the hash, otherwise we return null. Okay, now let's do the magic. So for the magic, we need use effect, which is going to be imported from React. And then we are going to go and do this at the start, only one time, not more than once, only one time is enough. Then we are going to first say that set the client is client to be true. Notice and remember that use effect only runs on the client. So the moment this ran, that means the client is now true. Okay. So next is we are going to say const hash change handler, and we will set the hash to get hash path, right? Hash path change handler, you can say. I can also make sure that this is also renamed, and then also this can be hash path and this can be hash path. Okay, then we will add in the window, we will add an event listener, which is going to be hash change, right? And this hash change will simply run this hash change path handler. Okay, and then we will run a cleanup, which will be a function, and this will be window dot remove event listener, because we have added the event listener. So make sure that you clean up, you run the cleanup function in the use effect where you remove the event listener, which is hash change, and you will pass this hash change path handler like this, and that should do the trick. So let's go back to our use link, and we will let all these be as it is, but for now let's also say hash path and use hash path, and let's check whether it is working or not. If it is not, then we have made some sort of like a mistake. Well, first of all, there is no error, but if you look here now in the hash path, we have this contact, right? And remember that we have removed in the hash path this. Why? We don't need it, right? We know where the ID is. Basically, anytime this is going to be ID, right? Where we have to scroll. So basically, we are just extracting the ID. Simple as that. So we can also say that this is going to be hash path ID like this. If I go to about, it says nothing, right? It remains the same. For example, if I go here, this is still the same. If I go about, it is still the same. If I land in this contact, it says contact. But if I navigate, even though this changed, nothing changed here, right? So how to make it work? Again, we have to apply some sort of more tricks. And for example, I just close a lot of things. So for example, basically our hook will remain as it is. Nothing has changed here, right? Nothing has changed. It remains as it is. In this client link component, what we can do is create a hash href, and we can use href dot substring. Now what this will do is that in the header, when we send this, okay, this will extract out everything after the slash, which is, this is 0, this is 1, this is 2, 3, 4, and so on. So including 1, everything that comes after it is what this substring will extract out. And then in this link component, I will say on click, and then here I can simply say window dot location dot href equals hash href. This will force this object to have a new value, and when that happens, this will run automatically. So we will get another hash, and when that happens, this will load, and so this will entire thing will run. Now I think I changed this. Let me just remove this here and go back. It says about, if I go to contact, it says contact. If I go to home, it says nothing. Contact is contact. Cool. So now this is working for us. There could be some sort of like an error that could happen in hydration and all of that. I tried to make sure that we don't get that, but yeah, this is quite a hacky solution for a very easy problem that Next.js team does not fixed, right? They simply removed a thing called router as path, which was present in next/router, which does not work in this app directory. It works still in pages directory. So there you have it. One thing more, you see this link component. If I try to say on click, right, and let's say console.log I clicked. Now remember that this is a server component, right? This is a client component and this is a server component. I mean, this link is inside the server component rather than the client component, which is this. Now, if I go here, it gives you an error. Why? Well, because if you read it, event handlers cannot be passed to the client component props. Well, if you look here, it says /h. If you need interactivity, consider converting part of this client component, part of this to a client component. Now, this is bad error, I believe so, but the actual reason is basically you cannot use any sort of event handlers like on click, on whatever in the server end. If you simply remove this, save, it works again. Okay, so that clears that. Now that we have this href, need to build our path name. So let's call it actual path name. And this will be basically path name /*. This is how we actually build it. So let's simply look into this. This is what we are getting, which is hash contact. And this is what is the actual path name that we are going to get. We simply have to remove this like this. This is the hash ID coming from the URL. So that's why we need this as well as this hook. This is the ever changing one. This is the one that we are clicking. When they both are same, that is when the active class should be present. So this now can be class name. Then we can have hash ref equal actual path name. If that is the case, apply the simple, let's say for now, let's go with the underline. And if that's not the case, let it be like so. Let's see what happens. So now we are in this about. Here we are in this contact us. We can remove all these things for now, and we can just say hash ref and hash path ID. We go back here, we go to the inspect, and here we will see that this is this, and hash path ID is nothing, right? Okay, about. This is hash href, but it also is hash about. So when I click on this, hash href will run for this, for this, for this. And since we are in the development mode, it will run 2 times. So for this, for this, for this, for this, for this, for this. And it will check what is our hash ID, which is about. It will simply compare it, and that's about it. So let me just pass this instead. When I am on home, there's still a hash that is coming up. That's why it is not working. So for that, hash href is empty, hash href equal empty. Then simply say hash path id. Otherwise do this. Now it is working fine. So this is how we actually work with the client component.